Self-love is not proving that you were right. It is not explaining your pain to someone who already chose to misunderstand you. In Buddhist wisdom, self-love begins the moment you stop holding the door open for the one who hurt you and quietly close it without anger, without revenge, and without a final conversation. The mind believes healing requires answers, apologies, and closure, but peace arrives when you realize that carrying their memory is costing you your present. Letting go does not mean forgetting what happened. It means you stop bleeding in places they no longer have access to. Stay with this message, because what you are about to hear is not about them anymore. It is about returning home to yourself. 1. Holding on is resuffering the past every day. Buddhism teaches that suffering does not only come from what happened to us, but from the way we keep holding on to what already happened. Painful events occur once in time, but attachment gives them a second life inside the mind. When someone hurts you, the action itself belongs to the past, yet the mind, when attached, keeps bringing it back into the present. You replay the words they said, the moment you were betrayed, the look on their face, or the silence that followed. Each replay feels real again, as if it is happening now, even though your body is safe in this moment. This is how holding on quietly turns one painful moment into daily suffering. The Buddha taught that clinging is the root of suffering, because the mind becomes trapped in what no longer exists. The event is gone, but the memory remains alive through resistance. You may tell yourself that you are holding on because you want justice, closure, or understanding, but often the mind is simply afraid to let go because pain has become familiar. The mind believes that remembering protects you from being hurt again, but in reality, it keeps the wound open. Each time you imagine what you should have said differently, each time you wish they would finally apologize, and each time you wonder why they treated you that way, the heart tightens again. This tightening is suffering recreated by attachment. Letting go quietly is not denial, and it is not pretending that nothing happened. Buddhism does not teach avoidance of pain, but awareness of how pain continues. Letting go means recognizing that reliving the past does not heal it. It means understanding that your mind deserves rest. When you stop replaying the same memory, you are not saying the pain was small or unimportant. You are saying that your present life matters more than a past moment that cannot be changed. This is self-love in its truest form, because it protects your inner peace instead of feeding old wounds. Peace begins the moment you stop allowing the past to occupy your present thoughts. When you notice the memory arise and gently choose not to follow it, you loosen the grip of suffering. Over time, the memory loses its power, not because it disappears, but because you no longer give it energy. Buddhism teaches that whatever you feed grows, and whatever you stop feeding slowly fades. When you stop feeding pain with attention, peace naturally grows in its place. Holding on keeps you trapped in yesterday. Letting go quietly brings you back to today, where healing can finally begin. 2. Silence is not weakness, it is inner maturity. Buddhism teaches that true strength does not come from reacting quickly, explaining yourself repeatedly, or defending your pain in front of those who caused it. Real strength comes from understanding when silence is wiser than words. When someone hurts you, the natural impulse of the ego is to speak, to prove, to demand answers, or to make the other person understand how deeply they affected you. The mind believes that if you explain enough, if you say the right words, the pain will finally be acknowledged and released. But Buddhism gently reminds us that not every ear is ready to hear, and not every heart is capable of understanding the harm it causes. Silence is not weakness. Silence is the moment you realize that your peace does not depend on being understood by someone who has already shown you who they are. Inner maturity is knowing that continuing to speak to someone who refuses to listen only drains your energy and deepens your suffering. When you let go quietly, you are not suppressing your truth. You are choosing not to throw your truth into a space where it will not be respected. This choice protects your heart. It prevents further harm. It allows healing to happen without reopening wounds. In Buddhism, silence is deeply connected to awareness. When you stop reacting, you begin observing. You notice how the urge to explain comes from pain, fear, or the desire for validation. By staying silent, you allow that urge to rise and fall without acting on it. This creates distance between you and your emotions, and in that distance, wisdom grows. You begin to see that you do not need the other person's agreement to move forward. You do not need their apology to reclaim your dignity. You do not need their acknowledgement to validate your pain. Your experience is already real. Letting go quietly is an act of self-love because it places your inner peace above the need to be heard. You understand that some people are not meant to walk with you into healing, and forcing them to do so only slows your growth. Silence becomes a boundary, not a punishment. It is a gentle withdrawal of energy from what no longer nourishes you. Over time, this silence brings clarity. The noise fades. The emotions soften, the mind becomes lighter. Buddhism teaches that peace is not found by controlling others, but by mastering the self. When you choose silence, you are practicing this mastery. You are saying, without words, that your healing matters more than winning an argument. You are allowing life to unfold without resistance. In that quiet space, the heart slowly returns to balance. Silence becomes healing, and maturity becomes freedom. 3. Forgiveness is for your freedom, not their comfort. Buddhism teaches that forgiveness is not something you do for the person who hurt you, but something you do to free your own heart from suffering. Many people misunderstand forgiveness and believe it means excusing bad behavior, forgetting what happened, or allowing someone to hurt them again. This misunderstanding keeps people trapped in resentment because they feel forgiveness would betray their pain. In reality, Buddhist wisdom shows that forgiveness is not approval, it is release. It is the decision to stop carrying anger as a permanent burden inside your mind. When someone hurts you and you hold on to resentment, the pain does not remain in the past. It follows you into your thoughts, your sleep, your relationships, and even moments that should feel peaceful. The person who caused the harm may have moved on, but your mind keeps reliving the experience. Buddhism explains that this is because anger and resentment bind you energetically to the one who hurt you. Even in their absence, they continue to control your inner world. Forgiveness breaks this invisible chain. It cuts the connection that keeps you tied to the pain. Forgiveness does not require an apology. Buddhism teaches that waiting for an apology places your peace in someone else's hands. Many people never take responsibility for the harm they cause, not because the pain was small, but because they lack awareness. If your healing depends on their acknowledgement, you remain trapped. Forgiveness allows you to move forward without their permission. It is an inner decision that says, I will no longer let this define me. This is not weakness, it is courage. In Buddhist practice, forgiveness begins with understanding. Understanding does not mean agreeing with what happened, but recognizing that people act from their own suffering, ignorance, fear, and conditioning. When you see this clearly, hatred slowly loosens its grip. You realize that carrying anger does not punish the one who hurt you, it only exhausts you. The Buddha taught that holding on to anger is like holding a burning coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned first. Forgiveness is the moment you decide to put the coal down. Letting go quietly through forgiveness is a deep act of self-love. You do not need to announce it. You do not need to confront anyone. You simply stop feeding the anger with your attention. Each time resentment arises, you gently remind yourself that peace is more valuable than replaying the wound. Over time, the emotional charge fades. The memory may remain, but it no longer controls your reactions or emotions. This is true healing. Buddhism teaches that freedom is an inner state. When you forgive, you reclaim that freedom. You no longer carry someone else's mistakes as your identity. You return to your natural state of calm, clarity, and balance. Forgiveness does not erase the past, but it releases you from being imprisoned by it. And that release is one of the purest forms of self-love there is. 4. Detachment is not coldness, it is compassion for yourself. Buddhism teaches that detachment is often misunderstood as becoming emotionally cold or distant, but in truth, detachment is one of the most compassionate acts you can offer yourself. Detachment does not mean you never cared. It means you cared deeply, yet you finally recognize that continuing to hold on is harming you. When someone hurts you, the attachment does not end with the relationship or the event. It lingers in expectations, hopes, and unanswered questions. You may still wish they would change, understand you, or feel remorse. This quiet hope keeps the wound alive. Detachment begins when you see clearly that expecting peace from the same source that caused your pain is unrealistic. Buddhism teaches acceptance of reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. When you detach, you are not hardening your heart. You are softening it enough to stop forcing it into situations that no longer nourish it. This is compassion turned inward. You stop demanding yourself to endure what continuously drains your emotional energy. Many people confuse detachment with indifference, but they are not the same. Indifference is avoidance. Detachment is awareness. You acknowledge the feelings fully, but you no longer let them control your actions or thoughts. You allow the emotions to rise and fall without clinging to them. In doing so, you protect yourself from repeated disappointment. Buddhism teaches that suffering increases when we resist reality, and detachment is the practice of releasing that resistance. Letting go quietly through detachment means you stop asking why someone treated you poorly and start accepting that this is who they were in that moment. You no longer need to analyze every detail or justify their behavior. You simply step back. This step back is not rejection of the other person, it is protection of your inner peace. You understand that you cannot heal in the same environment that hurt you. Detachment creates space for healing to breathe. Detachment also frees you from emotional bargaining. You stop thinking, if I do this, they will finally change, or if I wait longer, they will realize my value. Buddhism teaches that attachment to outcomes is a source of suffering. When you detach, you release the need for a specific ending. You trust that life unfolds according to causes and conditions, and when conditions are harmful, stepping away is wisdom, not failure. Self-love grows stronger as detachment deepens. You begin to feel lighter, not because the pain vanished overnight, but because you are no longer carrying it everywhere. Your mind becomes clearer. Your reactions soften. You respond instead of react. Detachment allows you to remain kind without sacrificing yourself. It teaches you that love does not require self-abandonment. In Buddhist wisdom, detachment is the doorway to peace. It is the moment you choose to stop bleeding internally for someone who cannot see your wounds. By letting go quietly, you return your energy to yourself. And in that return, healing slowly becomes possible. 5. Closure comes from understanding, not apologies. Buddhism teaches that one of the greatest illusions of the human mind is the belief that peace will arrive only after someone explains themselves, apologizes, or finally admits they were wrong. Many people remain emotionally stuck, not because the pain was too great, but because they are waiting for closure from the very person who caused the wound. The mind tells you, If they just say sorry, I can move on. Or if they explain why they did this, I will finally feel at peace. But Buddhist wisdom gently reminds us that placing your healing in another person's hands is itself a form of suffering. Closure does not come from words spoken by others. It comes from insight that arises within you. When someone hurts you, the desire for an apology is often not about forgiveness, but about validation. You want confirmation that your pain was real, that you mattered, and that what happened was not acceptable. Buddhism teaches that your pain does not require external validation to exist. It already exists. Waiting for someone else to confirm, it only prolongs your attachment to the hurt. Many people never apologize, not because the harm was small, but because they lack awareness, courage, or emotional maturity. Some people protect their ego at all costs. Others are so disconnected from themselves that they cannot face the consequences of their actions. If your peace depends on their awareness, you remain trapped in expectation. Buddhism teaches that expectation is a subtle form of attachment, and attachment always leads to suffering. Closure that depends on another person is fragile. Closure that comes from understanding is stable. Understanding, in Buddhist terms, does not mean justifying what happened or excusing harmful behavior. It means seeing clearly without illusion. You begin to understand that people act from their conditioning, fears, wounds, and limitations. This does not make their actions right, but it explains why continuing to wait for them to change only deepens your pain. When you understand this, something shifts inside you. The mind stops asking, "Why did they do this to me?" and starts saying, "This is what happened, and I choose not to carry it anymore." Closure also comes when you understand impermanence, a core teaching of Buddhism. Everything changes, relationships change, people change, feelings change. What hurts you today will not hold the same power forever unless you keep feeding it. When you accept impermanence, you stop demanding that the past return and fix itself. You accept that some chapters end without explanation. This acceptance is not resignation, it is wisdom. It is the realization that peace does not come from rewriting the past, but from releasing your grip on it. Letting go quietly is how true closure forms. You do not need a final conversation. You do not need to send a long message explaining your pain. You do not need to hear them say they were wrong. Closure happens when you stop reopening the wound with questions that have no healing answers. It happens when you choose clarity over confusion. You acknowledge the pain, you learn from it, and you allow yourself to move forward without dragging the past behind you. Buddhism teaches that freedom is internal. When you stop waiting for an apology, you reclaim that freedom. You realize that healing was never meant to come from outside you. It was always meant to arise from awareness, understanding, and acceptance. Closure is not something someone gives you. It is something you create the moment you decide that your peace matters more than their explanation. That decision is self-love in its most mature and powerful form. When you understand this deeply, the heart becomes lighter, the mind becomes quieter, and the need for answers slowly fades. What remains is calm acceptance and the strength to continue your journey without bitterness. This is the quiet closure Buddhism points toward, a closure rooted not in words, but in wisdom. 5. Closure comes from understanding, not apologies. Buddhism teaches that one of the deepest traps of suffering is the belief that peace will arrive only after someone explains themselves, apologizes sincerely, or finally admits they were wrong. The mind convinces you that closure is something another person must give you, as if your healing depends on their awareness. Because of this belief, many people remain emotionally tied to pain long after the event has ended. They wait, they hope, they imagine conversations that may never happen. This waiting quietly keeps the wound open. When someone hurts you, the desire for an apology is often not about the apology itself. It is about being seen. It is about wanting your pain to be acknowledged and validated. Buddhism teaches that while this desire is human, it becomes suffering when your peace depends on it. Your pain does not become real only when someone else recognizes it. It was real the moment you felt it. Needing another person to confirm it gives them power over your healing, and this power keeps you stuck. Many people never apologize, not because the harm was small, but because they lack awareness, humility, or emotional depth. Some are unable to face their own actions. Some protect their ego by denying responsibility. Others simply move through life unconscious of the impact they leave behind. If you wait for such a person to bring you closure, you may wait indefinitely. Buddhism teaches that expectation is a subtle form of attachment, and attachment always leads to suffering. Closure that depends on someone else is fragile, uncertain, and outside your control. True closure arises from understanding. Understanding, in Buddhist wisdom, does not mean excusing what happened or minimizing your pain. It means seeing reality clearly, without illusion or resistance. You begin to understand that people act from their own wounds, fears, conditioning, and limitations. This understanding does not make their behavior acceptable, but it frees you from the endless question of, why me? You realize that what happened was not a reflection of your worth, but a reflection of their inner state at that time. As understanding deepens, the mind slowly releases its demand for answers that will never heal you. You stop reopening the wound with questions that only lead to more confusion. You recognize that no explanation can change what already happened. Buddhism teaches impermanence, the truth that all things arise and pass away. Pain, too, is impermanent, but it lingers when we cling to it. When you accept that some chapters end without explanation, you stop fighting reality. This acceptance is not giving up, it is wisdom. Letting go quietly is how real closure forms. You do not need a final conversation. You do not need to send a long message explaining your pain. You do not need to hear them admit fault. Closure happens when you understand that continuing to seek answers only deepens your attachment. It happens when you choose clarity over chaos, peace over replaying the past. You acknowledge what happened, you learn from it, and you allow yourself to move forward without dragging the past into every new moment. Buddhism teaches that freedom is internal. When you stop waiting for an apology, you reclaim your freedom. You realize that healing was never meant to come from outside you. It was always meant to arise from awareness, insight, and acceptance. Closure is not something someone gives you when they are ready. It is something you create the moment you decide that your peace is more important than their explanation. As this understanding settles in, the heart softens, the mind grows quieter. The emotional charge around the memory slowly fades. The event becomes something that happened, not something you continue to live inside. This is the kind of closure Buddhism points toward, a closure rooted not in words or apologies, but in deep inner clarity. And in that clarity, self-love quietly takes its place. 6. Peace grows when you stop carrying what is not yours. Buddhism teaches that much of our suffering comes from carrying burdens that were never meant to belong to us. When someone hurts you, the pain may begin with their actions, but it continues because the mind takes ownership of emotions, responsibilities, and meanings that are not truly yours. You may carry guilt for what you did not cause, shame for what you did not choose, and responsibility for emotions that were never yours to manage. Over time, this invisible weight becomes exhausting. The heart grows tired, the mind becomes restless, and peace feels distant. Buddhism gently reminds us that freedom begins when you put down what you were never meant to carry. Many people internalize pain by asking questions that turn suffering inward. What did I do wrong? Why wasn't I enough? How could I have prevented this? While reflection can be healthy, Buddhism teaches that self-blame often arises from attachment and fear, not truth. When someone acts with cruelty, dishonesty, or neglect, those actions come from their own conditioning, wounds, and choices. Carrying their behavior as your personal failure only deepens suffering. Letting go quietly means recognizing where your responsibility ends and where theirs begins. This recognition is not judgment, it is clarity. The Buddha taught that suffering grows when we grasp and identify with pain. When you say, "This hurt defines me," or "This pain is who I am now," you fuse your identity with suffering. But pain is an experience, not an identity. It passes through awareness, but it does not have to become the center of your being. When you stop carrying pain as a personal label, space opens inside you. In that space, peace begins to grow naturally. Buddhism does not ask you to suppress pain, but to stop making it heavier by holding it too tightly. Peace also grows when you release emotional labor that drains you. Many people continue to carry concern for how the person who hurt them feels, what they might think, or whether they will ever understand the damage they caused. This constant mental engagement keeps you emotionally tied to them. Buddhism teaches non-attachment as a way of reclaiming your energy. When you stop monitoring someone else's awareness or growth, your attention returns to the present moment. This return is healing. Your breath becomes deeper. Your thoughts soften. The nervous system slowly settles. Letting go of what is not yours also means releasing the need to fix the past. The mind often believes that if it analyzes long enough, replays enough times, or imagines different outcomes, peace will finally arrive. Buddhism teaches that this is an illusion. The past cannot be corrected through mental repetition. Each replay only strengthens attachment. When you recognize this, you gently withdraw your attention from the endless loop. You do not fight the thoughts, you simply stop feeding them. Over time, the mind learns that it no longer needs to protect you through rumination. Compassion plays a quiet role in this process. Compassion for yourself means allowing yourself to rest from carrying pain that has exhausted you. It means acknowledging that you have suffered enough and do not need to suffer more by reliving it. Buddhism teaches that compassion without wisdom leads to self-sacrifice, but compassion guided by wisdom leads to peace. You learn to care without carrying. You learn to remember without reliving. You learn to feel without drowning. As you put these burdens down, peace does not arrive dramatically. It grows slowly, like a plant nurtured by patience. You may still remember what happened, but it no longer weighs on your chest. You may still feel moments of sadness, but they pass without consuming you. This is how peace grows in Buddhist practice, not by force, but by release. When you stop carrying what was never yours to hold, you return to balance, and in that balance, self-love becomes a quiet, steady presence within you. 7. Letting go is returning home to yourself. Buddhism teaches that beneath all pain, confusion, and attachment, there is a natural state of peace already present within you. This peace does not need to be created, earned, or proven. It exists quietly, like a still lake beneath rippling waves. When someone hurts you, and you hold on to that pain, you move away from this inner home. Your attention becomes scattered, pulled into memories, imagined conversations, and emotional reactions that keep you tied to what already passed. Letting go is not about forgetting what happened. It is about returning your awareness to where it belongs, back to yourself. When pain enters your life, the mind often leaves the present moment in search of meaning. You may search the past for answers or project into the future, hoping things will change. Buddhism teaches that this movement away from the present is where suffering multiplies. The present moment is the only place where peace exists. Letting go quietly is the practice of bringing the mind back from endless wandering. Each time you choose not to follow a painful thought, each time you soften instead of tightening around a memory, you take a step back toward yourself. Returning home to yourself means reconnecting with your breath, your body, and your awareness. Pain pulls the mind into stories, but the body always remains in the present. Buddhism teaches mindfulness as a way to ground yourself again. When you notice the breath moving gently in and out, when you feel the weight of your body resting, you remember that you are alive here and now. The pain may still exist, but it no longer defines the entire experience of being alive. Letting go is allowing the pain to exist without letting it take over your identity. Many people fear letting go because they believe it means losing a part of themselves. In reality, holding on is what causes loss. You lose peace. You lose clarity. You lose connection to your inner wisdom. Letting go restores what attachment took away. Buddhism teaches that nothing essential is lost through release, only illusion falls away. When you stop clinging to who hurt you, you make space for who you are becoming. This space is where healing unfolds naturally, without force or effort. Returning home to yourself also means reclaiming your worth. When someone hurts you deeply, it can quietly distort the way you see yourself. You may begin to question your value, your judgment, or your ability to trust. Buddhism reminds us that your worth was never dependent on another person's behavior. Their actions were shaped by their own causes and conditions. When you let go, you release the false belief that their treatment defines you. You remember that your value is inherent, untouched by harm, and unchanged by rejection. As letting go deepens, you begin to experience a gentle shift inside. The emotional charge around memories softens, thoughts lose their sharp edges. The heart becomes less guarded, not because you are naive, but because you are grounded. Buddhism teaches that wisdom creates openness, not fear. When you return to yourself, you no longer need to protect your heart with walls. Awareness itself becomes your protection. You see clearly, you feel deeply, and you remain steady. Letting go is also the practice of trusting life again. Pain often makes the world feel unsafe, unpredictable, or unkind. Buddhism does not promise a life without pain, but it teaches trust in impermanence. Everything changes. Pain arises and passes. Joy arises and passes. When you understand this deeply, you stop clinging to moments that hurt and stop fearing moments that will eventually end. You begin to flow with life instead of resisting it. This flow is peace. Returning home to yourself means accepting solitude without loneliness. When you let go of who hurt you, there may be a period of quiet emptiness. Buddhism teaches that this space is not something to fear. It is a sacred pause where the heart resets. In this stillness, you reconnect with your own presence. You learn to sit with yourself without needing distraction, validation, or emotional noise. This ability to be with yourself is one of the greatest forms of self-love. As this homecoming continues, compassion naturally grows. Not forced compassion, but a gentle understanding of human suffering. You may begin to see others, including the one who hurt you, as beings struggling with their own pain. This does not invite them back into your life. It simply frees your heart from bitterness. Buddhism teaches that compassion without attachment is liberation. You can wish someone well without carrying them. You can understand without reopening wounds. This balance is wisdom. Letting go does not happen once. It happens again and again, in small moments. Each time a memory arises and you choose presence over rumination, you let go. Each time you soften, instead of resisting emotion, You let go. Each time you return your attention to the breath, the body, and the now, you come home. This practice slowly rewires the mind. What once felt heavy becomes manageable. What once felt overwhelming becomes spacious. In Buddhism, enlightenment is not escaping life, but meeting life fully without clinging. Letting go is not an ending. It is a beginning. It is the beginning of living without dragging the past into every moment. It is the beginning of responding instead of reacting. It is the beginning of a relationship with yourself built on gentleness, awareness, and truth. When you return home to yourself, you realize something quietly powerful. You were never broken. You were never lost. You were simply distracted by pain. Letting go removes the distraction. What remains is clarity. What remains is peace. What remains is you, whole, present, and enough. This is why Buddhism teaches that self-love is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering who you were before suffering convinced you otherwise. Letting go is the path back, quietly, gently, completely. 8. Letting go quietly is how you reclaim your life energy. Buddhism teaches that every thought you think, every emotion you hold, and every memory you revisit consumes life energy. This energy is subtle, but powerful. It shapes your mood, your focus, your health, and even the way you experience time. When someone hurts you and you continue to carry that pain, a large portion of your life energy becomes trapped in the past. You may not notice it immediately, but slowly you feel more tired, less motivated, and emotionally heavy. Letting go quietly is not just emotional healing, it is the act of reclaiming your life force. When the mind is attached to pain, it becomes busy without rest. Even in moments of silence, the mind continues working, replaying scenes, analyzing motives, and preparing defenses for conversations that may never happen. Buddhism teaches that this constant inner activity is a form of exhaustion. The body may be sitting still, but the mind is running endlessly. Over time, this drains vitality. Letting go is not about forcing the mind to stop, but about gently removing the fuel that keeps these thoughts alive. When you stop feeding painful memories with attention, the mind naturally slows. Energy returns to the present moment, where it belongs. Many people underestimate how much energy resentment consumes. Anger tightens the body, the jaw clenches, the chest contracts, the breath becomes shallow. Buddhism teaches that emotions are not only mental experiences, but physical ones. When you hold on to resentment, your nervous system remains in a state of tension, as if danger is still present. Even when the person who hurt you is no longer around, your body continues to react as if the threat remains. Letting go quietly allows the body to relax. The breath deepens, the muscles soften. Healing begins at a level deeper than thought. Reclaiming your life energy also means withdrawing it from places where it is wasted. When you constantly think about someone who hurt you, you are still giving them your attention. Buddhism teaches that attention is power. Whatever you give your attention to grows stronger in your inner world. When you stop giving attention to pain, you do not become numb, you become free. The energy that once fueled suffering becomes available for creativity, clarity, and presence. You begin to feel more alive, not because life became perfect, but because your energy is no longer leaking into the past. Letting go quietly also restores your ability to be fully present. Pain pulls you away from now and traps you in then. Buddhism teaches that life happens only in the present moment. When your energy is stuck in memories, you miss the simple richness of being alive. You miss the warmth of the sun, the taste of food, the sound of silence, and the gentle rhythm of breathing. Letting go brings you back into direct contact with life. Presence becomes natural again. Small moments begin to feel meaningful. This is not coincidence. It is energy returning home. Another way life energy is lost is through emotional resistance. When pain arises and you fight it, judge it, or wish it away, the struggle itself consumes energy. Buddhism teaches acceptance not as surrender, but as wisdom. When you allow emotions to arise and pass without resistance, they move through you instead of draining you. Letting go quietly means allowing pain to exist without clinging to it. You stop arguing with reality. This acceptance frees enormous amounts of inner energy that were previously used to fight what already happened. As energy returns, your inner world begins to change. Thoughts become clearer. Decisions feel easier. You feel less reactive and more grounded. Buddhism teaches that clarity is a natural result of non-attachment. When the mind is no longer crowded with old wounds, it becomes spacious. In this space, insight arises naturally. You begin to see your life with fresh eyes. Possibilities that were once hidden by pain slowly reveal themselves. Reclaiming life energy also changes how you relate to others. When you are no longer carrying unresolved pain, you stop projecting it onto new relationships. You listen more deeply. You respond more calmly. You set boundaries without guilt. Buddhism teaches that inner harmony naturally expresses itself outwardly. As you let go quietly, your presence becomes calmer and more stable. Others may feel this without knowing why. This is the quiet power of inner healing. Letting go does not mean you will never remember what happened. Memories may still arise, but they no longer drain you. They pass like clouds through a wide sky. Buddhism teaches that awareness is like the sky, vast and unchanged by passing weather. When you identify with awareness instead of pain, your energy remains steady. You are no longer pulled into every emotional storm. This stability is not emotional coldness, it is emotional freedom. Over time, you may notice something subtle but profound. You wake up with more ease. Your mind feels lighter. Your reactions soften. You feel more connected to yourself. This is not because you tried harder to heal. It is because you stopped carrying what drained you. Letting go quietly is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It simply restores what was always yours. In Buddhism, the highest form of self-care is not adding more, but releasing what burdens the heart. When you let go of who hurt you, you reclaim the energy needed to live fully. This energy fuels awareness, compassion, creativity, and peace. It supports you in becoming present, grounded, and whole again. This is why letting go quietly is an act of deep self-love. It is not about forgetting the past. It is about choosing life now. It is about returning your energy to the present moment and allowing it to nourish you instead of your pain. When life energy flows freely again, healing is no longer something you chase. It becomes the natural state you live from. 9. Loving yourself means choosing peace over being right. Buddhism teaches that one of the most subtle yet powerful sources of suffering is the need to be right. When someone hurts you, the mind naturally wants validation. It wants acknowledgement that you were wronged, that your pain was justified, and that the other person should understand the harm they caused. This desire feels reasonable, even fair, but Buddhism gently reveals how clinging to being right quietly keeps suffering alive. The mind remains locked in argument, replaying conversations, constructing explanations, and waiting for a moment when truth will finally be recognized. In this waiting, peace is postponed. Loving yourself means recognizing that peace and being right often cannot coexist. When you choose to hold on to the need to be right, you remain mentally engaged with the person who hurt you. You rehearse what you would say if given the chance. You imagine defending yourself more clearly. You wait for a day when they will finally see things from your perspective. But Buddhism teaches that this attachment to being understood is another form of clinging, and clinging always leads to suffering. Even if you are right, the emotional cost of holding on to that truth can be far greater than the relief it promises. The Buddha taught that the ego thrives on comparison and judgment. It wants to label one person as wrong and another as right. This labeling creates separation inside the mind. When you identify with the role of the one who was wronged, the pain becomes part of your identity. You are no longer simply someone who experienced hurt. You become someone defined by it. Loving yourself means refusing to let pain define who you are. It means loosening the grip on the story that keeps you emotionally entangled. Choosing peace does not mean denying what happened. It does not mean pretending the harm was acceptable. It means understanding that your inner calm is more valuable than proving a point. Buddhism teaches that arguments continue long after words stop being spoken. They continue internally, fueled by memory and imagination. Each mental argument consumes energy and keeps the nervous system in a state of tension. When you choose peace, you step out of this internal battlefield. You stop participating in conversations that exist only in your mind. Many people fear that choosing peace means losing their voice or betraying their truth. Buddhism teaches otherwise. Peace is not silence forced upon you, it is silence chosen with wisdom. You can know the truth without carrying it like a weapon. You can honor your experience without reliving it. Loving yourself means trusting that your truth does not need constant defense. It exists regardless of whether others acknowledge it. Letting go of the need to be right also softens the heart. When the heart is busy defending itself, it becomes rigid and closed. Buddhism teaches that rigidity is a form of suffering. Softness, guided by awareness, is strength. When you release the need to win, you regain flexibility. You respond instead of react. You listen to your inner needs instead of external validation. This shift creates emotional freedom. As you choose peace, something subtle changes. The emotional charge around memories begins to fade. The urge to explain weakens. You feel less pulled toward the past and more grounded in the present. Buddhism teaches that peace is not something you chase. It arises naturally when resistance falls away. When you stop arguing with what happened, the mind settles. When the mind settles, clarity emerges. Choosing peace also allows compassion to arise, not just for others, but for yourself. You recognize how much effort you spent trying to be understood, how much energy you lost replaying pain, and how deeply you wanted acknowledgement. Instead of judging yourself for this, you meet yourself with kindness. Buddhism teaches that compassion without judgment is healing. You see that your struggle was human, and you gently allow yourself to rest. Over time, loving yourself through peace transforms your inner world. You become less reactive and more stable. You stop measuring your worth through conflict. You stop carrying conversations that never happened. You stop waiting for moments that may never come. This does not make you passive. It makes you free. Freedom is the ability to choose calm over chaos, clarity over confusion, and peace over being right. In Buddhist wisdom, the highest victory is not winning an argument, but ending the inner war. Loving yourself means laying down the weapons of resentment, justification, and expectation. It means choosing a quieter, deeper strength. When you choose peace, you choose yourself. And in that choice, healing quietly continues. 10. Self-love is staying present instead of escaping the pain. Buddhism teaches that one of the most misunderstood aspects of healing is the belief that pain must be escaped, avoided, or replaced as quickly as possible. When someone hurts you deeply, the mind immediately looks for exits. It tries to distract itself, numb itself, or jump into something new, so it does not have to feel what hurts. While these strategies may bring temporary relief, Buddhism explains that they often delay real healing. Self-love, in its deepest form, is not running away from pain, but learning how to stay present with it without being consumed. Staying present does not mean forcing yourself to feel intense emotions all at once or drowning in suffering. It means allowing the pain to exist without labeling it as a threat. When pain arises, the body often tightens, the breath becomes shallow, and the mind races to escape. Buddhism teaches mindfulness as a way to gently interrupt this cycle. You notice the pain without judgment. You observe where it sits in the body. You feel the breath moving through it. By doing this, you stop turning pain into an enemy. It becomes an experience, not an identity. Escaping pain often creates more suffering than the pain itself. When you avoid feeling, the pain does not disappear. It goes underground. It shows up later as anxiety, irritability, numbness, or emotional exhaustion. Buddhism teaches that whatever is resisted persists. When you stay present, pain is allowed to move. It rises, changes, and eventually fades. This natural movement is blocked only when you cling to it or run from it. Self-love is trusting this process instead of fearing it. Being present also means letting go of the stories that surround pain. The mind often adds layers of interpretation such as, "This should not have happened," "I will never heal," or "This pain defines me." Buddhism teaches that suffering is amplified by these stories. The raw sensation of pain may be difficult, but the mental commentary makes it unbearable. Staying present means returning again and again to direct experience, to the breath, to the body, and to the now. In doing so, you separate pain from fear. Self-love through presence also restores your relationship with your body. When hurt is ignored or suppressed, the body carries tension long after the event has passed. Muscles tighten, energy stagnates. The nervous system remains on high alert. Buddhism teaches that awareness gently relaxes the body. When you bring attention to sensations without trying to change them, the body begins to trust again. It no longer feels the need to stay armored. This is not something you force. It happens naturally through presence. Staying present also helps you release emotional timelines. Pain often feels unbearable because the mind believes it will last forever. Buddhism teaches impermanence, the truth that all experiences arise and pass away. When you stay present, you experience this truth directly. You notice that emotions fluctuate. Some moments feel heavier, others lighter. Even within pain, there are pauses. These pauses remind you that pain is not permanent. Self-love is remembering this when the mind forgets. Presence also prevents you from abandoning yourself. Many people leave themselves emotionally when pain becomes intense. They disconnect, dissociate, or seek external validation to avoid feeling alone. Buddhism teaches that true refuge is found within. Staying present means staying with yourself when it is uncomfortable. It means becoming the support you were seeking from others. This is not isolation. It is inner companionship. You learn to sit with yourself gently, without judgment or pressure. As you practice presence, something subtle but profound begins to happen. The pain loses its sharpness. It becomes softer, more spacious. It may still arise, but it no longer overwhelms you. Buddhism teaches that awareness itself is healing. When you meet pain with awareness instead of resistance, the pain transforms, not because you tried to change it, but because you stopped fighting it. Self-love is also choosing patience with your healing. Presence teaches you to stop rushing yourself. There is no deadline for letting go. There is no schedule for moving on. Buddhism teaches that forcing healing creates tension, while allowing healing creates peace. Staying present means trusting your own pace. It means honoring where you are without comparing your journey to anyone else's. Presence also reconnects you to life beyond pain. When you stop escaping, you begin noticing what is still here: the warmth of the sun, the sound of silence, the rhythm of breath. These simple experiences do not erase pain, but they remind you that life is larger than it. Buddhism teaches that awakening happens not by avoiding life, but by meeting it fully. Pain is part of life, but it is not all of it. Over time, staying present becomes a form of strength. You realize that you can feel deeply without breaking. You can sit with discomfort without being destroyed by it. This confidence does not come from control, but from trust. Trust in impermanence, trust in awareness, trust in yourself. Self-love grows naturally from this trust. In Buddhism, the path to peace is not about creating a perfect life, but about meeting life as it is with openness. Staying present instead of escaping pain is one of the bravest acts of self-love. It means you stop running from yourself. You stop abandoning your inner world. You choose to be here, fully, even when it is difficult. When you stay present, healing is no longer something you chase. It becomes something that unfolds naturally. Pain becomes a teacher instead of an enemy. Awareness becomes a refuge instead of distraction. And self-love becomes a quiet, steady presence that supports you through every moment, without condition. This is the deepest lesson Buddhism offers about letting go. You do not let go by pushing pain away. You let go by staying close enough to understand it, long enough for it to soften, and gently enough for peace to emerge on its own. Buddhism teaches that self-love is not something loud, dramatic, or proven through words. It is something lived quietly through awareness, patience, and release. Letting go does not mean forgetting what happened or pretending the pain was small. It means you choose not to let pain become your permanent home. When you let go quietly, you stop feeding suffering with attention, expectation, and resistance. You allow life to move again. Throughout this journey, each lesson points to the same truth. Suffering continues not because pain occurred, but because the mind keeps returning to it. When you stop replaying the past, stop waiting for apologies, stop carrying what was never yours, and stop arguing with reality, something inside you softens. That softness is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is the heart remembering how to rest. Letting go quietly is an act of courage. It requires facing pain without escaping it, forgiving without reconciliation, detaching without bitterness, and choosing peace without needing to be right. Buddhism teaches that freedom is not found by controlling others or changing the past, but by releasing the grip of attachment. When attachment loosens, peace naturally appears. Not because life became perfect, but because your relationship with life changed. Self-love, in its truest form, is staying present with yourself through every stage of healing. It is choosing awareness over avoidance, compassion over self-blame, and clarity over confusion. You learn that you do not need closure from outside. You do not need validation from those who hurt you. You do not need to carry pain to prove that it mattered. Your experience was real, and your healing is valid. As you let go, you return home to yourself. You rediscover the quiet strength that was always there beneath the pain. You begin to live with more lightness, not because the past disappeared, but because it no longer controls you. The heart opens, the mind calms, life feels spacious again. Buddhism reminds us that peace is not something to chase, but something to uncover by releasing what blocks it. Letting go quietly removes those blocks, one gentle moment at a time. And in that quiet release, self-love becomes not an idea, but a way of being.